If someone were to ask you to find the largest ranch in the world, you might start looking in Alberta, or maybe Texas. You'd probably never think of the Arctic. Yet, that's where it is. Sprawling 150 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, just east of the Mackenzie River Delta, is the Canadian Reindeer Preserve. It's not really a ranch, but 12 million acres of tundra grazing range, a vast northern pasture fully stocked with 15,000 reindeer. The herd is owned by William Nasagelawak, one of Canada's most successful Inuit entrepreneurs. Reindeer are not native to the Canadian Arctic. Their establishment is one of the unique stories in the history of experimental agriculture. Originally, great herds of barren ground caribou roamed the area of the preserve. These were hunted to depletion and feeding the hundreds of commercial whalers who arrived in the 1890s, when firearms were also introduced. Some 20 years later, when the great whaling ships departed, the Inuit could no longer depend on caribou as a source of food and clothing. In the 1920s, the Canadian government grew anxious to improve local economic conditions. The establishment of a reindeer industry seemed a feasible way to provide both food and employment. Vilhelmur Stefansson, the Arctic explorer, greatly favored the idea. He wrote, "Reindeer can convert into delicious meat the billions of tons of vegetation that go to waste yearly on the northern prairies." Essentially, reindeer are domesticated caribou, differing little from their wild cousins. In Europe, they were first domesticated by the Lapps of northern Scandinavia, who have been herding them for centuries. The Canadian government hired a botanist, Erling Porseld, to search for suitable grazing land. His findings led to the purchase of reindeer from Alaska, where herds imported from Siberia had flourished. Andrew Barr, an experienced Lapp herder, came out of retirement to take charge of driving the herd to Canada. Their route lay through 2,600 kilometers of rugged country. Their destination was the newly designated Reindeer Grazing Preserve. It was a slow and difficult trek. They were beset by blizzards, intense cold, wolves, and the disruptive presence of other reindeer and caribou. Just short of their destination, they were halted by treacherous ice conditions on the Mackenzie River. They spent 2 long winters waiting to cross. And finally, in 1935, 5 years after the epic journey began, 2,370 reindeer were delivered, most of which had been born along the way. A base, Reindeer Station, was ready about 100 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean on the east branch of the Mackenzie River. The Canadian government brought 3 Lapp herders and their families from Norway to assist in handling the reindeer. One, Mikkel Pulk, chose to stay with the project as chief herder till his retirement, some 35 years later. The plan was to let local Inuit gain experience working with the herd. Later, they would be granted animals of their own on separate sections of the preserve. Graham Douglas, now retired in Ottawa, was reindeer superintendent at the station from 1952 to 1960.
When we went to the station, there were 3 native herds in existence. All during those years, the government maintained a main herd as a nucleus for establishing native herds. During my time at the reindeer station, our purpose was to get the native herds established and keep them operating successfully if possible. And at the same time to, of course, look after the main herd, keep building it up so that more native herds could be split off. A big part of the job in building up the main herd and with the native herds also was prevention of losses through straying. Well, before I left there, I had come to the conclusion that the reindeer would have to come back into one big herd.
A number of conditions obstructed the success of the small native-owned herds, including competition for the best grazing lands, mixing of animals from the different herds, insufficient income from the sales of meats and hides, and during the 1950s, opportunities for wage employment in well-paying jobs constructing the distant early warning line. By the early 60s, the last of the native herds was returned to the government. To determine a new direction for the reindeer project, the government asked Professor John Steger to undertake a study and produce a report.
I suppose it was because I had been in the Tuk and Nuvik areas since about 1954 and spent several field seasons there, that the Canadian Wildlife Service approached me to make a study of the reindeer herd and recommend the future action that they might take. I invited a colleague of mine, Dr. Ken DeNike, in geography, who brought his expertise in the economic aspects of such an enterprise to join me, and we did a joint report. We surveyed the local conditions as best we could, not so much biological, but more social and economic. And after looking at the history, we came to the ultimate conclusion, and we recommended to the government that they sell the herd to a local native person.
Silas Kangagana, a herder in Canada for almost 30 years, bought the entire herd of about 5,300 reindeer. He was able to double its size within his 5 years of ownership. In 1978, Silas sold the herd to William Nasagalawak of Tuktoyaktuk. Tuktoyaktuk is a coastal village located within the boundaries of the preserve. It is also the home of several long-time herders whose experience and advice have helped turn the reindeer herding experiment into a viable, profitable enterprise. Peter Rufus, whose father owned the first native herd, is one of William's most valuable employees.
I started in 1940 at Anderson River. My dad had the herd, so he had no other herders, so I started pretty young. It was good, you know. I was young that time, so we used to ski instead of ski-doing, walking in summertime. And we have herd dogs with us too, you know, so it really works. And the dogs are good, they really help us. It's a lot easier now. We go with the skidoos. Never use dogs now, just skidoos.
In the spring, the reindeer drop their fawns. It's a time of great anxiety, for the new mothers and fawns are extremely vulnerable. Herders stay with their herd 24 hours a day. The voices of the reindeer are rarely heard throughout the rest of the year. The fawns have the deepest, loudest voices and aid to survival. They are able to run with the herd within hours of birth and nibble at lichens almost immediately. However, their fearless curiosity often leads them to trouble. Reindeer hair is hollow, providing excellent insulation. However, if it gets wet, as in an early spring rainfall, the fawns are in danger of freezing to death. The reindeer must also contend with predators who take advantage of their weakened state. Wolves, grizzly bears, and even foxes take their toll.
The wolves are bad. When they just killing sometimes, just for fun of it, they kill quite a bit. I know when we was at Anderson River, one night they killed 40 altogether. Fawns and females. Just right outside the tent too, while the herders were sleeping. You have to, well, those days you have to keep an eye on them because you can go too far skiing, you know. You have mosquito trouble sometimes, cold. But springtime is nice. Long daylight. You could travel all you want as long as the ski is going, as long as you got the gas.
Reindeer, like caribou, migrate annually from the winter range on the southern portion of the preserve to summer grazing in the north on the Tuktoyaktuk Peninsula. The summer grazing range hosts annual vegetation and can easily accommodate the entire herd. However, the rest of the preserve is largely lichens, which may take up to 40 years to replenish. Every precaution must be taken against overgrazing and trampling, so the winter ranges and migratory routes vary each season. The migration must be carefully managed to avoid problems of overgrazing. The most modern technology is employed to this end. Dr. Peter Murtha of the University of British Columbia was asked to conduct a range survey by remote sensing, which is a process of recording the image of a large land surface and magnifying it so that each area can be analyzed.
The basic use of the remote sensing data for William will be to provide him with information which will enable him to move his herd and more efficiently manage the herd.
The satellite imagery is sent through the computer system to the image analysis hardware that's here, and we do a number of enhancements and classification techniques to bring out the information that the satellite provides. On this basis, we then take that information, transfer it to maps or to photo products, and then this serves as information that can be taken out into the field and used directly in conjunction with management of the reindeer range.
Ascertaining the health of the herd means spending time examining animals. Dr. Gordon Godkin, a prairie rancher and a government veterinarian, keeps a close watch on the reindeer.
Reindeer travel up the Tuktoyaktuk Peninsula for summer range because it's all grass and they're close to the seacoast for minerals and to avoid the flies and mosquitoes. As you can see, this grass up here grows very tall and very quickly in the summertime and provides lots of feed. It is, when it's dead, it is no good for winter range. Once it's dead like this, you can see there's green grass coming here now about 4 inches tall, and this is nearly the 1st of July. Now we have this other type of ryegrass over here. Now this type of ryegrass that we have here, as you can see, it grows exceedingly tall in the short season. It comes very, very fast. The reindeer like it when it's fresh and green. Once it turns dead, there again, there's very little food value left in it.
In June, the Reindeer Project holds its annual roundup. Modern techniques have affected the entire approach. In less than 40 years, Peter Rufus has come from following the herd on foot to directing operations from one of the helicopters. In the short northern summer, where time is of the essence, the 24-hour Arctic daylight is a great bounty. To round up part of the herd and drive it to the corral may take as long as 36 hours. Once the critical breakaway point is passed, the men stretch a burlap fence out behind the herd. An interesting quirk of reindeer is their instinct to mill when being corralled. In Lapland, reindeer mill in a clockwise direction, opposite to those in North America. When the Lapps first attempted to corral the Canadian herd, they were astounded to find the reindeer milling anti-clockwise. The fencing had been raised on the wrong side of the corral, and all the animals escaped. Only small groups are brought in at a time. If a large mass is corralled for too long, the animals become thirsty and stampede.
Yeah, long ago when we have roundup, we used to walk, you know. But now, the last 3 years, I've been having roundup, going with helicopter, and it's a lot easier. So when the reindeers are coming in, the pilot listen good to two of them going, 2 helicopters going, and they do real good. It's a lot easier better than walking anyway.
Smaller groups of animals are pushed into the second corral and then the holding pen. One by one, they file through the chute. The reindeer are counted, horns are removed, and breeding stock is selected. Orange ear tags are attached to indicate which animals will be taken at next slaughter, and Dr. Godkin inspects their condition. All the fawns are tagged and counted. Because the reindeer are losing their winter coats, the air is congested with hair. The men use bandanas or face masks to make breathing easier. Manpower is never a problem. Despite the hustle and hard work compressed into 2 to 3 weeks of roundup, the prospect of good pay and the challenge of this unique teamwork bring surplus workers each year. Eunice Nasagalowik, William's wife, has been keeping the reindeer accounts since Silas owned the herd.
We employ mostly the local people. We never have problems hiring people because there's a lot of people that are willing to work for a short period of time.
Slaughter is another seasonal operation carried out twice annually in the cold months. The Department of Agriculture insists on sanitary meat processing facilities. Adam Emmahook has been herding since 1941.
This is new to me. I never skinned this way. Hang the carcasses, you know. That time when we used to skin, we just put them out on the ice and skin them the way they are. Now they wash them and they examine them. They have doctors. We have no doctors that time to examine the meat.
To export meat from the territories, a government stamp of approval is necessary. Dr. Godkin examines the meat to ascertain quality.
Well, this is a farming enterprise. There's no difference. And the potential of this herd as a farming enterprise is tremendous, as I see it. With all the byproducts you have, which there's sale for all the byproducts. When there's sale for the hides, the leg skins, this brings in export dollars, and this is important for the whole of Canada. The meat is of excellent quality. I like reindeer even better than I do beef. Reindeer tastes somewhere in a cross between lamb and beef.
The Reindeer Project gives priority to the needs of the local people before any exporting takes place.
What I've been doing myself is I've been sort of subsidizing the northern market by creating a southern market, which I've been doing over the past year. Boost the price up a little bit for the southern market because they seem to be in demand, and keep the northern prices low.
Local people may purchase meat anytime and often stock up with skins as well, which make thick, warm ground covers for camping. Leg skins, having shorter hair, are usually made into warm boots. The potential of reindeer on the world market is vast, but like any item being introduced to consumers, it needs promotion. It is the product of a land where, at one time, as Stephenson wrote, billions of tons of vegetation went to waste yearly. Reindeer herding in Canada is ideally suited to the character of the North and its peoples. Its story is one of trial, error, and adaptation. A story of determination and success in one of the harshest climates on Earth.
Yeah, I'll be herding as long as I could keep going, because I like herding, used to it. I like staying out with them because it's more fresh air and all that. I like staying in town, nice and quiet and free. It's just like free life put in there, you know.